We have 7 people in this house, which is truly a 3-bedroom house. And I'm not working currently. I just would have come off of what would have been a pregnancy leave just last week. He's just now 6 weeks old. I had actually lost my job in April due to, illness in the family, and basically the attendance policy at my work didn't allow for me to take any extra time for my mother or my kids. And so I lost that job and went on unemployment.
And what were you doing?
I worked at a call center. I took inbound calls for a sports company. They actually handle a lot of different sports endeavors, which I actually really enjoyed my job. They're just had a very strict attendance policy. So I wasn't able to, when my mother went in the hospital and was diagnosed with her heart condition, I wasn't able to get an exception for those, family emergencies.
And you were also, very pregnant at the time.
I was also very pregnant, and just barely missed my my time to be able to take family medical leave instead of losing my job. So that was disappointing. With my mom in and out of the hospital, she was my primary care person for my kids, and so if she was having a hard time or was not able to watch them, I would have to go home or stay home with them. So that was awful. It was hard. So I would think I was about 5 months pregnant or so when I lost my job.
As Governor McCrory said, wouldn't that be a lesson you would want to teach your families, to pay your bills on time? That's great. And, I say to him, I think that anyone would want to feed their families first. You feed your family, you put a roof over its head, you make sure that it's taken care of and safe, and then you turn to the people wanting to collect bills. And whatever is left, then you divvy up. But you don't throw your kids out the window so that you can look good to the bill collector and say, oh yeah, I'm going to give you the $75 or what have you that I would have paid to feed my family. That to me is irresponsible. How can you stand up and face people and say, well, I'm not feeding my family, but boy, I saved money on that bill.
They are trying to find a job. They're trying desperately hard to find a job. And they have 4 children. One of them is, 5-month-old baby. They had their benefits cut in July, and they are struggling to just pay energy bills. Mm-hmm. And, you may blame maybe, the mother or the parents for being unemployed, but, these children, it's not their fault, right? And they're struggling to eat. They're struggling to have a shelter. And I'm just wondering how you would respond to them, seeking help and, feeling somehow that they're being judged for being unemployed.
Right. One thing that I have in a background that's a little bit unique is that I actually had a period where I worked on the staff of a church. And the overwhelming majority of the people who call themselves Christian do not give to the church as their Bible commands them to, and that's called tithing. Now, the government was never established to be the provider for individuals who are in dire straits. That job was supposed to be undertaken and discharged by the local church. Jesus himself said in Matthew 23:23 that you should not leave tithing undone. He also said in Luke chapter 11. So individuals who know their Bible would know that even their Lord Jesus commanded that they tithe, but the people of God are not tithing, so the government has assumed that role. They're assuming the role that they was never designed to do. Am I unsympathetic to that situation? No, because as a Christian, there are individuals who aren't even a part of my church. If I knew they had a need, I would do whatever I could for them. So it's not a matter of whether or not Bill Randall personally thinks something needs to be done. I think that everybody in the community should have a heart, and that should be something that is done by the community. But if you want to know why that problem exists, at the heart of it is those who call themselves the people of God are not doing what their Lord called them to do.
I'd probably scream obscenities until I turned blue and fell over if he said that to my face. It's not the job of the government to help its people. I find that very ironic. I find it also ironic that he would say that people need to turn to their churches after mentioning the Constitution. I think that he is a deplorable human being. I hope that he loses his race for mayor. I'm thankful that he lost his race for Congress. When you're hoping to run a city, you're not just representing the libertarian people or the Republican people or the Democratic people. You have to represent all of your people's interests. I think that he forgets that there are poor people who live in his state.
Okay, so this man, we talked to him for about 3 hours. And I, like I'm doing now, I chimed in from behind the camera a couple of times, and he told me afterwards that I gave him a lot of hard questions, and they had to do, a lot of them had to do with race and equality.
Okay.
But I felt that he listened. I felt like he budged, he moved a little bit during the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine that he's not just an obstacle, but he's someone that you could actually reach. And it's possible that he could change. What would you say?
All I could do would be to talk to him about, not about all the tens of thousands of other people, because there's just a sea of us, but just about myself and my circumstance, since that's what initially he was asked about. I would tell him of my experiences. There's a lot of my history that isn't documented here, that plays a big role in how I wound up where I am, and actually how far I've come up from where I started. And if he still feels the same way after having an actual conversation with me about my circumstance and my points of view and how things actually are, there's just not a lot I can say about that. And I would be a very unfeeling person to not budge at all.
Can I ask you what the circumstances are that you're referring to that might help him to be more compassionate?
Sure. I was in an 8-year-long, very physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive relationship with my ex-husband. I was not allowed to work. I didn't have any outside friends. I didn't leave the house. For the most part, without him, I didn't drive. I had to watch my kids be abused. He had... Hey, buddy. He had the whole household under his thumb and walking on eggshells around him. He had control of the money, and I can't say how unspeakably bad it can be when somebody that selfish has total control of your finances. So after removing him finally from my life and trying to remember how to stand up on my feet, I finally did that. I was employed full-time. I took care of my, at that time, 3, now 4 children, and my mother. And I stood up and I held up that burden by myself until illness in the family and my own pregnancy led us into the circumstances that we're in, that kind of picks up on, where the unemployment started. I did stand up. I did take responsibility. I was taking care of my family. And I am capable. why are these programs here if not for me? And not for others like me, for those that need them. People don't want to be poor. This is awful. You know, people don't stay on welfare. I keep hearing that argument from people. Because it's easy. It's god-awful hard to get on welfare, let alone stay on welfare, let alone maintain any sort of standard of living on any kind of welfare program that still exists in this country. And I don't think that people should exist as solely dependent on government either. People don't do it because they want to. Trust me, it's a horrible experience, really. It's very demeaning and dehumanizing. It's not enough, really, to live on either, and nobody wants to do that. It is the biggest privilege in this lifetime to be able and capable of a simple act of paying your own bills. It's a privilege to be able to do that, and people don't know that until they can't.